So we're going to call the meeting to order. We don't have a quorum, so we won't pass any resolutions or anything like that, but we will take in the information and pass them hopefully at the next meeting when there is a quorum. So we're going to call the meeting to order, recognizing that we are on unceded territory of the Taoiseach and Huiptjasit people. And notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube on the Regional District website. First, we're going to do a round of introductions. So let's go. My name is Cindy Solda. I'm the City of Port Alberni City Councillor and the Chair of the Accessibility Committee meetings. So let's start with Heather.
Good morning, everyone. Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services for the Regional District.
Hi, I'm Kat Belisle. I'm the official title.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Darling, Director of Corporate Services for the City of Port Alberni.
Jacob, here, go ahead.
Yeah, hi all, hope you can hear me. My name is Jacob Burnley, Transit Planner at BC Transit.
Adam.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam Bishop. I'm the Manager of Accessible Transit at BC Transit. Thank you so much for having us today.
Jamie. Oh, we can't hear you. Are you muted? I think we've lost her. Oh. Veda.
Veda Siga, Area C Director for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District.
And Seth.
Good morning, I'm Seth Wright. I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations for BC Transit. Thanks for having us.
And Jamie, there she is. Jamie.
Hey, can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Okay, hi, thanks. Jamie Tatry, I'm a member of the Accessibility Committee. Thank you.
And welcome everybody. And Kat, you're a member at large and very important at this Accessibility Committee meeting. Okay, just so you know, that's yeah. Okay, so anybody have let's do the approval of the agenda. Any additions or anything like that? No, I'm just going to add one thing as an addition is I want to talk about Bilo parking lot and no frills parking lot and their accessibility sign. I just want to touch base on that first. So we'll just put that under new business, and I think I think it's important. So I'll just leave that and let's go approval of the agenda. Oh, we can't even do that. So just ignore me. We're just getting in declarations. Any conflicts of interest? Anybody got $1 million given to them or anything like that, or little gifts? Nope. Let's carry on. There was the Accessibility Committee meeting held May 13th. I wasn't available, and we can't adopt that. But anybody want any errors or omissions in there? No. Okay, let's move on. Anything that we need to bring up in the minutes? No, we're good. Okay. And let's go to delegations. Who wants to start? Jacob or Seth, or who wants to go right ahead?
Yeah, I can start. Thanks for having us. I'll just share my screen here and we'll pull up our presentation and give you a bit of background on the work that we're working on with the Transit Future Service Plan for Port Alberni. I hope that you can see my screen shortly here. Give me a thumbs up if we look good.
Yes, we can see you.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just we'll give a bit of background on the work that we've been working on over the past the year and a bit for the Port Alberni transit system. A bit of background on the concepts and future expansion plans that we have proposed for the system, and a bit of background on the public engagement that we've conducted with community members, with transit users, with local bus drivers, our operators, and of course municipal and regional district staff. So to give a bit of background, what we've been working on, really the plan that we're working on and we have been working on is really to provide a sort of 5 to 7 year conceptual transit expansion plan for the Port Alberni transit system. The report really aims to offer some interim guidance for some of these improvement opportunities and really ensure that transit's work is rooted in alignment with local planning and development, but also ensuring that we're responsive to addressing some of the gaps and reflecting the needs and desires of transit users based on what we hear from public feedback, based on what we see in our data, and of course, in listening to our transit operators about what they see on the ground. So in terms of transit today, I'm sure you're all aware of the context of the system. We have our 3 routes that run during the day, the AM/PM routes, the routes 1, 2, and 3, and then there's sort of a consolidated route with the route 4, the crosstown route, which you can see on your screen highlighted in pink. That is sort of a consolidation of all 3 that runs on Sundays and also runs in the evenings. Really, in looking back over the last decade and a half, most of the system and the system structure has remained relatively stable. With much of the system coming out of a 2012 service review. One thing I will mention about one thing I will mention about the transit system in Port Alberni is that in 2012, it was really restructured to operate as a pulse system, meaning that all the routes would leave the central exchange at Redford at the same time, roughly, and arrive back at the same time to allow for some seamless transfers between people traveling from the south end of the city north to River Road or to the Walmart or a Pacific Rim Center. So currently, the service offers just over 12,000 annual service hours. However, and which is quite strong for a community of Port Alberni size. However, I will mention, and I'm sure you're all aware, that there are a number of service gaps, notably between our scheduled conventional routes and the custom handy dart service. So from the map on screen here, just at a high level, just want to make note that the system in its current structure does provide quite good coverage across a number of residential areas within Port Alberni. Good coverage in terms of areas with higher population density, higher concentrations of seniors and low-income residents as well. Really, one of our target goals for transit service and transit delivery across communities in BC is really to ensure that we're looking at service within 400 meters at a maximum of most residential areas. And what you can see on the map there is our coverage with our current route overlay is quite strong. Really, the goal of our plan here and what we've been looking at and the concepts to improve the current service and also expand into new areas is really around responding to community growth, responding to the feedback, like I said, that we hear, and really ensuring that we're supporting transit expansion in new areas, but also really focusing on those defined key corridors with planned high density future mixed use development and really offering efficient connections to a number of key neighborhood nodes. So in that spirit, we did conduct a lot of engagement and discussion with city staff as well around their future planning, transportation planning, official community planning, et cetera, and got some really interesting feedback. So when we look at sort of the system performance of Port Alberni, really it's quite in line with a number of other small and mid-sized systems in the province. The service has seen gradual year-to-year ridership return since 2021. We haven't yet reached 100% of pre-pandemic levels, but really we have noted continual annual steady return in ridership, which is really positive to see. One thing I will mention is Port Alberni is actually experiencing ridership at about 5 to 10% below the provincial average, but the transit system, with the number of hours and the size of the schedule that the service actually delivers, results in the service being 25% smaller than other peer systems. So I guess when you're factoring in the system size, ridership proportionally is actually quite strong in compared to peer systems in BC. And then lastly, I'll just mention the graph on the graph below. You can see the service hours there. And just in keeping with others around the province, I'll make note that Port Alberni's dedicated transit service hours remain stable year over year. And that was not the case for all systems across the country, particularly in smaller and mid-sized communities. So ensuring that ridership remained stable was key, and I think also key in noting the gradual ridership return, that the service was there for people to return back to. So really dialing in now from the system to the route specific level, our current and most consistently highest performing route for conventional transit remains the Route 2. Obviously, this is unsurprising when considering the amenities and the venues that it's accessing. Pacific Rim Center, the Walmart. Obviously, the Walmart is a key destination in the community. There's the high school, North Island College, a number of recreational facilities as well, and then obviously the Uptown Core. This route sees about 22 boardings per hour that the route is in service, which is quite strong. I will note, obviously, the Route 3 and the Route 4 are notable lower performers in terms of ridership, but Route 3 in particular plays a really critical role in ensuring broader service coverage to a lower density area and connections to those key services in town. And then obviously the Route 4 is that consolidated evening service. And generally, what we see across the board in systems large and small is traditionally those off-peak travel times. We don't see the ridership that we do during peak time. So those lower comparative ridership numbers are expected. One thing I will mention is when we're talking about ridership and we're talking about route performance, I will mention that in I would say mid 2024, we started gaining really, improved access, better technology on board our buses, and we're starting now to be able to get access to greater detailed and more reliable service usage data, not just at the route level, but also looking at specific trips and even specific bus stops. So the data that we have available to us that is equipped on board the buses is really allowing us to be a bit more targeted and strategic in where we want to see investment. So looking at the data that we get on hand, couple that with the operator and the rider feedback, we have a pretty good source of data available to us that we're working towards to be a bit more strategic and to better respond to some of the concerns and what we're seeing on the ground. So as part of this plan, we conducted a series of engagement events and a series of engagement strategies. There were a number of crucial steps, obviously, in canvassing the community and understanding travel needs, some of those user-facing gaps in the system, and just overall concerns or questions about the transit system. So public engagement was launched back last year in sort of mid-2024, and there was some community marketing that was facilitated through a variety of tools and channels. Through the process, we hosted a general public survey with some targeted questions about people's usage, perceptions of service, and prospective areas for improvement and expansion. Obviously, we hosted a dedicated survey for our transit operators as well to better understand what our bus drivers were seeing on the ground. Very helpful, very insightful, and a lot of the data that they provided was in alignment with what a lot of the public had mentioned, a lot of the transit using public had mentioned as well. We supported an open house and some workshop sessions with some key community stakeholders, and obviously as well supported some engagement alongside the ACRD when it came to working with local community partners at local First Nations as well, with Hippichesset and the Sechot First Nation, which provided us with some really valuable feedback and understanding some of the existing experiences of First Nations community members in the region when using transit, and some of those desires as well, and some of the gaps. So really, like I mentioned, there was a variety of feedback that we heard. We did hear a lot about the gaps in the service, but we did also hear that the service that's currently structured is quite reliable, and that's really based on the fact that the service is that pulse schedule. Like I said, buses kind of arriving in at the same time, allowing people to make largely seamless transfers, which is obviously positive and not always the case in every community. When systems grow and they move away from that sort of structure of a schedule where buses are arriving together, oftentimes we do hear with select trip cancellations or whatnot that there are gaps in the service. So this is really good to see. There was a really strong satisfaction rate a strong service reliability rate amongst users, around 87%, which comparatively is quite strong. And we did note, though, that there is gaps when it comes to perceptions of safety on board, and then also some concerns with some of the frequency and span of service, particularly concerns the service does not run late enough. We did hear that from those adjacent to the service industry that obviously trips needing to run later is of a desire. How frequent those trips are during off-peak times as well is of concern. People traveling in the midday, obviously not a ton of trips to be able to choose from, and not a ton of flexibility. And I will note, though, that that we did see also requests for service beyond the current system itself. Most notably, connections between Port Alberni and the regional district of Nanaimo, really via Qualicum Beach and connecting into the Route 9 intercity route between Qualicum and Nanaimo. So I'll talk a bit more about that proposal later in the presentation, but just to make note that was one of the common threads that we heard from riders was questions around interregional service as well. So out of all the feedback collected, there are a number of priorities and recommendations that we're making with this plan. Like I said, this plan is strictly about service expansion and service change concepts. This doesn't go into infrastructure. It speaks to infrastructure, but it's really much more of a plan focused on service on the road. And the following two slides here, I'll go over each item in depth, so I won't focus too much on this, but I will make note that based on the current scheduling setup, like I said, there will need to be additional reviews through our scheduling department to ensure that that these proposals can be facilitated through the bus driver shifts and the assignment of buses perspective, I guess you could say. And so some of these hour numbers that are in this sheet are subject to change slightly, but the concepts have been sort of ironed out and worked through with staff and with staff internally and externally. So the first proposal is obviously for additional evening trips on the Route 4. As mentioned before, we saw really strong support for improving evening service on weekdays and weekends. The current span of service was noted in public engagement as being insufficient and not meeting a number of users' needs. So we would be looking at additional service on the Route 4 roughly on an hourly basis to approximately 11 p.m. And that would equate to about 1,300 annual service hours, resulting in the need for likely one additional bus in the system. But again, like I said, bridging that gap in the evenings, obviously there are considerations around safety as well without a lack of reliable transportation in the evenings. So this is really a key priority. It's something that we heard from our operators about. It's something that we also heard from our riders consistently about, and thus are making it one of our key priorities in this plan. The second piece is around improved service on the Route 2 during AM and PM times. As mentioned, highest ridership route. And while the current service is sufficient for the ridership that we do see, as Port Alberni likely grows over the next couple of years, given the nature of the route, we are likely to see increased ridership and more demand for more frequent and efficient service on this route. So this is our sort of our second priority here. Beyond the Alberni Valley specifically, and based on the feedback we heard from survey respondents and customer feedback, noted a really strong interest in interregional service as well, like I mentioned earlier. So about 93% of transit users that responded to our survey supported this request, and really an interest in year-round service to access those services and amenities that are not available in Port Alberni. Regional expansion would obviously need to involve participation with the ACRD and would require additional discussions to modify the governance and funding structure of the transit system. But really, I think the next step in this request would be for us to go forth as BC Transit to produce a feasibility and service report to understand the service options available to us from a scheduling, operational costing, and fleet bus capacity perspective. So really, I would just say this is a high level item that requires a bit more groundwork, but we are putting it, we are including it in the plan as a medium to long-term goal to begin to kickstart that process, to look at what our options are and to ensure that we're leaving no stone unturned when we're talking about potential interregional connections. The second piece here was an express interest to the Sechot First Nation. While service further west to Sprout Lake received some mixed public reception, in consultation with Sechot First Nation and in review of some previous local planning work as well, there has been consistent interest over the past number of years for an establishment of conventional service to Sechot. Obviously, again, further operational and feasibility assessments are required, but prior to formalizing a request for expansion funding. But really, a couple of options that have been slated here in the plan to provide at least a base level of service further west on Highway 4. One thing I will mention, one site that we heard from staff about in particular was Rainbow Gardens off of River Road. Based on some of the recent feedback, we did assess this option as a potential expansion item for the Route 3 in particular, which runs that loop via Compton, Beaver Creek, and around River Road and back into the city. We'll mention that when looking at this, we noted that the routing obviously is comparatively circuitous, not as direct, obviously, as the routing currently, but also that the Falls Road at Pacific Rim Highway bus stop, which you can see on your screen there in terms of location, it actually is the most used bus stop north of Johnson Road and the Alberni Highway in the system. So noting consistently that this is a key stop and also a connection for the Seychelles First Nation currently. And the ridership you can see there, we're seeing about around 19 passenger movements a day at that stop. And really for the short term, in the near future, it was suggested that Handy Dart service would be recommended as being preferable due to its capabilities around door-to-door access in accessing the facility at its front door, and providing a more efficient service for our existing ridership as well. I'll pass it over now to Adam Bishop to discuss our custom transit suite of programming in Port Alberni.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob. Thank you for having us again, everyone. Heather, thank you for the invitation back after my initial presentation to council a while ago. As Jacob mentioned, my role within our service planning department is the modernization and the future service planning of our what we refer to as custom transit, but is locally known as our Handy Dart service. So I am the lucky one that gets to take us from where we are today to a more modern service and program in the future. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited to share some updates around custom transit, how the current service is performing and what our plans are for the future. So thank you again for having us. So as you can see on the slide here, there's just an overview of what custom transit service is. For the audience of this committee, I don't think any of this will come as a shock for you. I think one of the things that I want to highlight is that pressure and demand for accessible transit in both the conventional side of the service and the custom side continues to grow as our understanding of disability has increased over the years. So this is reflected in 1 in 4 people between the ages of 15 and 64 reporting to have a disability in British Columbia. And that number, as you start to really parse that data, increases to over 40% for those over the age of 65. And as we all know, and we all hear, the population is aging, with 1 in 4 British Columbians set to be over the age of 65 by 2031. And so why do I mention that? For 2 reasons. One is, as Jacob sets the strategic direction for this system through this plan in the next 5 to 7 years, and you look at those numbers, what does that mean? That means that the next cohort of potential Handy Dart users are coming, and that cohort of people expects technology to be integrated into the service. So technology becomes the expectation, not the nice to have. So I'd just like everybody to bear that in mind as we go through the next update or the next couple slides. So Jacob, if you could pop over to the next slide for me, please, that would be amazing. Jacob has thankfully agreed to run the ship for us today. And so as we talk about the system performance here, you see a lot of data and you see some charts. And so again, I'm not going to go line by line, but a couple of things I just want to call out, and one overarching comment that I just want to make as I talk to this committee in particular, the fact that you guys are the accessibility committee. I talk with many such committees across the province all the time. I am the chair of BC Transit's internal accessibility committee. And why I share that is I want the members of the committee to understand that I intimately understand the challenges that people with disabilities face. And you may scoff at that or wonder, like, how can that be? And I think that's one of the disadvantages of a virtual meeting. And I'm sorry we couldn't be up there in person with you today, because if we were in person, I would be sitting in front of you in a bright orange wheelchair that people can't miss. So I have had a physical disability that has required me to use a wheelchair for my entire life. And so this work in the modernization of our custom transit or our Handy Dart service is not only, or is the culmination and the combination of deep professional work, having worked in this space for a very long time, but also very personal as well, because it has a direct impact on me, what my needs are, and the needs of the community as a whole. So it is one of those things as we go through kind of the modernization efforts, that we're working towards. It's an acknowledgement of the challenges we face, but there's also some enthusiasm and excitement about what's coming. So again, just using that as a foundation and setting that as a backdrop. So when we look at this system performance, one of the key things that I love to call out, and the first time I shared this with Jacob, he kind of sheepishly grinned. So when we talked about the conventional service, not quite coming back to pre-pandemic levels, I am really excited to say that the custom transit service has surpassed pre-pandemic levels. And as an example of that, we've seen continued increase for demand with 168 new active users last year alone. And we define active users as those who have utilized the custom transit service once in the last 18 months. So that doesn't take into consideration the regular riders, the regular users. That number is net new active. And one of the byproducts of that is we've seen increased demand for service is the gradual and sustained increase in taxi usage as overflow to manage that increase in demand to ensure that those that need a ride can get a ride as much as possible. Unmet trips remain low, as you can see on the slide there. And the cost per ride and the trips per hour are both, the cost per ride is below the current average, which is great news. It means the service, it's one measure of efficiency, and I only say one because we'll talk about that in a moment. And then the trips per hour, so the number of trips we're able to deliver each hour are above the current average, which is also great news. But I would be remiss if I said it was all sunshine and rainbows. As people in this committee likely know from utilizing the service, there are still challenges in accessing a ride when and how you want it. And a lot of that has to do with, again, the increased demand that you see. And the other thing that really kind of causes that challenge is a high subscription use, which is restricting the availability of the service same day or otherwise. And so I'll speak to that in some of the modernization efforts that we'll touch on in the next slide, because that is something we're really looking to solve. So Jacob, if we could pop over to the next slide, that would be amazing. Thank you, sir. So as we've gone through the service system performance itself and the overview of the service, what are we doing moving forward? So when I joined this role, I was part of our operations team for the first year that I was in this position. I've been with BC Transit for just over 5 in a couple of different leadership roles. We had just completed our custom transit strategy. And really what that strategy was designed to do was provide us a roadmap towards the modernization of the HandyDART service. Upon completion of that strategy, I sat with the regional operations group to get really tactical to begin with, and then have recently moved over to, as I say, the service planning team to partner with Jacob and the rest of the planning and scheduling team to really focus on the strategy and modernize the service itself. The underpinnings of the service are really to increase the availability and efficiency of the service. So one of the major foundational components of the service or of the strategy is something we're calling the custom transit solution. When the project started, it was primarily focused on the dispatch capabilities of a technology solution that could be modernized and rolled out across the province. And when I came on board, I really took a critical look at the project, and based on some feedback that we had heard from local government partners, from riders and users, and just my analysis of where the industry was going, I made a pitch to the organization to broaden the scope of the project and really have it be an all-encompassing solution, because I really felt that if we only focused on dispatch, we wouldn't have the opportunity, or we'd miss the opportunity to address some systemic and fundamental challenges with the HandyDART service. So we really expanded it to be an end-to-end solution. And so you can see the different things that this solution will encompass. So, starting from A, we'll be working to introduce a digital process for Handy Dart registration. We will be introducing basically self-service options for customers to book trips, making it easier and faster for them to manage their trips online or through an interactive IVR or by calling an agent as they do today. A mobile app and web interface to provide push notifications and messaging to inform customers about key service updates, including their registration status, trip booking details, and delays. While there will be that mobile app and web interface component, there will also be the IVR component to be able to call in and receive updates through the IVR, so you don't even need to speak with anybody or sit on hold. And we can also potentially configure the IVR to push out notifications to people. And again, I'd like you to keep those stats in mind in that next cohort of Handy Dart users potentially coming on board, and the expectation of technology. We're not only building this solution for the users of today, we're also building it for the users of tomorrow. Because if we don't do it now, by the time they come and are on board, we'll be behind the 8 ball. So a couple of other things that the solution will include is the ability to track key metrics to help guide vehicle and driver allocation for improved optimization of service. What I see that doing and what we see that doing in the different custom transit offerings and agencies across the country is that really is where we see the efficiency gains. That's really where we see the driving down of subscription trips, because routes and trips are continually optimized. The passenger mix is continually optimized to ensure the right people are on the right bus, getting to the places that they need to go at the times they requested or as close to as possible. And so that's really exciting. We've seen some pretty fundamental successes in like-sized transit systems based on the vendors we're looking at, and so we're really excited about that. And again, the modernization continues of new onboard technology and displays on Handy Dart vehicles to assist drivers with trip mapping and route navigation, allowing for real-time updates to driver schedules so that the service can be more flexible and dynamic to meet customer needs. And so really the layman's version of that is onboard navigation and optimization through real-time traffic integration and things like that to improve efficiency. And then for me, the second to last bullet is one of the really, or the two kind of 3 last bullets are the really exciting ones for me. So when Jacob talks about the stop level data that we now are getting access to in the conventional side of the business, this solution will also allow us to get similar type of data on our custom service, so that we can really continue to build out and enhance the service planning and future service planning and optimization for custom transit service, so that we can look at where demand is, where latent demand is, run modeling, and provide local government partners really actionable insights into how or the things they could do to continue to optimize and expand custom service, which is very, very exciting, because it's something we haven't been able to really capitalize on in the past. And so this really does give us the ability to be very proactive in our future service planning and addressing potential system needs. And then the last one there is as part of the project, we are also exploring electronic fare payment on the custom side of our business, whether that's UMO or another solution. The decision was made to use this project to really explore that place in this space to determine the best project or the best type of solution for this user base, and not just assume that it would be UMO. So that's been really exciting work as well. Jacob, if we could pop over to the next slide, I'll talk about the service priorities that we put together for this plan, but just to kind of tie things up with the custom transit solution, we are in contract negotiations with a preferred vendor at the moment, pending signatures on that contract. We are aiming for a phased rollout beginning in the 2026 calendar year. So that is really exciting. Estimates have been provided in 3-year budget forecasts for local governments, so there's an understanding of the cost there. And once those contracts or that contract is signed, you will hear us go loud with specific details around the solution, when you can expect it, what it'll do, all those sorts of things. So I hope I've kind of whet the appetite a little bit. I wish I could go into a lot more detail. Unfortunately, I can't until the contract is signed, but I'm happy to talk about it further, once you hear that contract is signed. Pivoting to the current priorities that we've identified in this plan. So you can see the first one there is peak service improvements. So that's really the big one, to address availability challenges brought on by the high subscription rates. And that will also reduce the reliance on the climbing taxi supplement that we're seeing, and allow us to have a conversation on how we want what we call non-dedicated fleet or taxis to be utilized. We have also, in the late 2024 or late last fiscal year, we also worked together to expand custom transit service to the Sechot First Nation. So that is really exciting. And just with that expansion of that service, the service area, there's just a need for future investment. And again, the hours request in this plan, as we move through our transit improvement process, we'll just need some refinement as we go back and forth with local government partners. So just want to call that out, very similarly to as Jacob did in his service priorities for the conventional system. The next one there is expanding the weekend service span to more closely align with weekday custom transit, and then the expansion of custom service to statutory holidays to move in line with the conventional service. Again, I am a really big proponent of equity and wanting to have the service be equitable, but I also think I also want the service and expansions to go where there is demand. And so that's where I really look forward to the custom transit solution, and really being able to engage or dive into that data to really see where the demand is, and also engage with committees such as yourself to understand from the users of the local system of where they feel the demand is, so that we can start to workshop that and put the puzzle pieces together. And so what I would ask this committee is really to, as you review our materials after this meeting and things like that, kind of look at the service priorities that we've put in place on the custom side and go, does that make sense to you based on what you're seeing on the ground? And then to provide us that feedback and share that information with us, because we do, an element of this is having the service priorities, as Jacob has alluded to, be user informed. So I will pass it over to Jacob. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, and I'm not. So I'll pass it over to Jacob to talk about some of the infrastructure priorities, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, just sort of two quick slides as we wrap up here. Firstly, obviously, infrastructure. The plan is like I said, more of a service conceptual plan, especially on the conventional side. But I will mention that as the system grows, ensuring capacity can be accommodated is crucial. The city is working with BC Transit on our shelter program to improve amenities at bus stops, and using that newly available ridership data at the stop level that we have to determine a prioritization for where bus shelters should go, improvements and amenities. And then I'll just mention, really, as BC Transit sets guidelines, it's ultimately the local government's responsibility to decide how and where these are built. But this is really where a committee like yourselves come in to really work with the local government to ensure that those needs are met, and that the investments that are being made on the infrastructure side and those first and last mile connections from one's home to the bus stop is supported. And we have our engineering team and our infrastructure design guideline supported information to help support those discussions as well where needed. And then lastly, I'll just note the process moving forward from a planning perspective, and how this report really fits into the larger structure of improvements. I'll mention that really the service improvements here will be integrated into a 3-year expansion process. These processes will be evaluated on an annual basis from a planning standpoint, from a fiscal planning standpoint as well. And so nothing in the plan, once approved at the city and regional district level, will be implemented with costing immediately. This is something that is, like I said, conceptual, and will be translated so that every year when BC Transit and local staff have these conversations about expansion, we can then get up-to-date costing and provide sort of some direction and initiative on where we recommend the system moving forward to. So that's really the presentation that we have today. Happy to answer any questions. I will mention obviously Seth, who is our government relations manager, as well as on the call, and we can answer any questions or inquiries you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before we go to questions, I just want to say thank you for taking the time, and I would like to see the members get a copy of this presentation, Heather, if we can. And we'll put it on the website so you can download it and do whatever you'd like to, and take a look at it and share it with members of your council and just to your committees and stuff like that. So anyways. Okay, so questions. Anybody have, I just want to do one more thing. We have another member of the committee joined us during the presentation. Marcy, do you want to introduce yourself? And welcome.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was unable to make the call right away. I was on another call, but I am Marcy DeWitt. I am the coordinator for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network, and I'm zooming in to you today from the territories of the Yukon Flats.
And welcome, Marcy. We don't have a quorum yet, so we'll just carry on. We're just, there's no votes or anything like that. It'll be just for information today. And questions? Do I have any questions? Heather.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Adam, can you speak about the taxi supplement and what that means and how does that work? Because I didn't know about that before.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and Seth can potentially jump in and speak to the budgetary component if we need to. So, taxi supplement is designed to be exactly that, a supplement to the core Handy Dart service. And so, essentially, what it means is in situations where demand is outpacing the availability of a Handy Dart vehicle to be able to deliver a trip, our operating partner can dispatch a taxi in lieu of a bus to ensure that an individual can receive the ride that they have requested. So it really is designed to be an overflow. There is careful consideration that goes into which clients or which Handy Dart riders are appropriate for taxi usage, because obviously depending on an individual's needs, and in a previous presentation, Heather, that you would have heard me give, I spoke about the complexity of an individual's needs that may potentially utilize Handy Dart. So there may be some people that that either choose not to have taxi supplement be an option, or based on the level of support or care they require, are not appropriate to have a taxi dispatched. One of the things that we're always looking to improve, and I always hear about, is the increased communication between the client and the operating partner when a taxi is dispatched in lieu of a bus. And then the other reason that a taxi can be dispatched as part of the taxi supplement program is if when the operating partner is building their trip manifest for the day and they're trying to deliver as many trips as efficiently as possible, if they see a number of rides with competing priorities, and some people, if by dispatching a taxi to some people where it's appropriate, it increases the availability of seats and rides that can be delivered by a Handy Dart bus, then they'll also do that as well to maximize the efficiency of the service and to deliver as many rides as possible while keeping those unmet trips and unaccommodated trips and things like that low. So I hope that answers your question, Heather. And if you have any other questions about that, happy to keep diving into it or take those offline as well.
Yeah, I just had one more comment. The regional district gives out grant and aids each year to local nonprofits. And this year we gave a grant and aid to the Canadian Council of the Blind. Part of it was to help with taxi vouchers because some of the trips that they've requested through Handy Dart haven't been able to be fulfilled. So I'm guessing that perhaps the blind community is not suitable for a taxi because the driver's not going to get them out and walk them to their front door. Is that?
That's not necessarily the case. I think it some of that depends on the rider's level of comfort and confidence as well.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. And anybody else have questions? No? I actually do. So first of all, regarding shelters and bus stops, how are you going to handle that? Like, I notice on some of the routes when you drive around our community, people have plastic chairs so they can sit down and wait for the bus. So there's one out Beaver Creek by the old Gill School, and which is now belongs to the Hoopachesset, and whatever development that they're going to be doing there, as well as in a couple of other areas. So not necessarily a shelter, but even like a bench or something like that, instead of having a plastic chair on the side of the road. Just kind of curious to know how you're going to handle the future for that.
Yeah, I can start on this response, and then Seth, maybe you can fill in some gaps. So yeah, to your question, I would say, yeah, every year, so there's the BC Transit Shelter Program offers a suite of options to local communities, whether it's shelters or benches of various sizes to accommodate various passenger and rider capacities. And like I said, we have that stop level data. And so what we've been doing is working back and forth, primarily with the city, especially on a number of sort of core urban stops currently, looking at ridership and then looking at nearby amenities as well, and what might be most amenable to stop improvements. That being said, we do also receive requests through our customer service channels, the contact submissions forms on our website, and riders have contributed there. They've provided feedback in our plan as well around locations that they wish to see improvements, and those can be assessed and added to a list, which obviously, like I said, is at the discretion of the local government to prioritize. But we do look at this on an annual basis. There are obviously a certain number of sites and a certain number of shelters available a year, but it is something that we are looking at on an annual basis, and we do receive feedback from a number of different channels. Maybe I'll pass it off to Seth to speak a bit more about the program.
Sure. I might just offer a couple of comments about scope and location. So the city of Port Alberni has been a great partner in terms of establishing bus stop infrastructure across the bus stops within the city. But you mentioned that this is a bus stop outside of the city boundaries and perhaps on reserve. If it's on reserve, it's ultimately up to the First Nation to establish a bus stop. It's always up to the road authority. Perhaps the ministry might be interested if it's a Ministry of Transportation road. The ACRD could work with the ministry and the First Nation at establishing a shelter or other waiting facilities if that's desired. We also have an informal chat channel at BC Transit where we share photos of our favorite informal bus stops where folks put up their own infrastructure. Well, it might not always meet the best standards for comfort and accessibility. It's not always a terrible thing if people are just improving their comfort for waiting at the bus stop, especially if it's not a lot of boardings per day, but we're keen to advance any conversation. And if there's specific bus stop ID, certainly forward that to Eddie as regional district staff, and we can look at having the conversations to improve bus stop infrastructure at the particular location.
Thank you. I should tell you that particular site stop is actually in the city. Just to be clear. And so is the school is still city. The next question would be regarding your digital. You're talking about going through a digital process, and some people with disability are not on computer, and some do not have credit cards and that. So how are you going to handle questions like that if you're going to put everything online? That's what I'm assuming. So how do we handle that?
That's a great question, and something I should have addressed in the core presentation. So as we look at this phased rollout of this solution, the paper or non-digital components are not going to go away. I see a day down the road where that is potentially the case, but absolutely, you know, as we begin the implementation and likely for at the very least the next couple of years, there will always be the ability to have be able to apply for services you currently do with paper and then have that be ingested into the solution. And I think what we've seen and what we've heard through other projects is so this project, as much as it's about technology integration, it's also about change management and good messaging and to get people comfortable with the tools that are available to them, so they can choose to utilize those tools if they'd like to, or they can choose to use the current channels by registering through paper, having it ingested in the system, and then still calling in to book their rides and do things like that, and use kind of the current channels that are available. I think one of the byproducts of a solution like this that we've seen in other like-size systems is you see one system in particular, within their first 6 months of utilizing a solution like this, they had a 20% drop in calls into their call center or their ability to book rides. And so what that meant was people were going to the digital channels, which were then freeing up space for individuals who weren't comfortable using the digital channels to then call in and still book their rides. So it really is a win-win for everyone, as the hold times dropped something like 96%, within the first 6 months. But it absolutely, to just come full circle, it absolutely is something that we'll monitor through the implementation and through the first, at the very least, couple of years of the solution, to go, where are people going? How are they utilizing the system? And do we need to make any changes as a result of that?
Okay, well, maybe with the new generation of seniors too that are coming forward, will be used to digital and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay. And my final question is regarding how are you going to handle the future of the roundabout, with your routes and that? How are you going to change that and let people with disabilities know? And there's going to be a lot of different patterns in the traffic for quite a while.
So are you speaking on the custom transit side for HandyDART or on the conventional
I
side?
believe for all of them. I think it's really important because we're suddenly if you're doing the custom and it's a one-lane traffic going in when we do the roundabout, when the construction of the roundabout starts on River Road, right? How are you going to handle that and let the information come out? I know a regional district will probably, and the city will have their own press releases, but the buses still will have issues going through, or it'll take a longer route, especially if you're taking a taxi. If you're taking a taxi it's going to cost a lot more going through that one-lane traffic.
So I think
costs go up.
Yeah, so I think I'll address the taxi piece, at least from the taxi supplement side, and then perhaps Seth, I'll hand it over to you to potentially address like how we manage changes like that. But just to clarify around the taxi piece, if somebody is utilizing a taxi as a result of the taxi supplement program in lieu of an actual ride on a HandyDART bus, they are only required to pay the HandyDART fare. So it's not like if you're dispatched a taxi in lieu of a HandyDART bus, you're now paying what that regular taxi fare would be. The taxi functions as a HandyDART ride, and so the fare, the equal fare for that HandyDART ride applies. So just to address that component, and then Seth, maybe I'll hand it over to you to just talk about how we manage communicating changes in routing and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I guess in terms of when we do routing changes, we have a fairly rigorous developed process where we do a campaign. The campaign, the work to develop the campaign starts about 6 months out and involves a new rider's guide and scheduling changes and planning work. But once when that campaign becomes public is 2 weeks before the service change starts, and we do a media advisory, we do alerts through our normal communications channels, and then we send out a new rider's guide. So there's paper copies of the new rider's guide, and I guess typically that does a reasonably effective job. I think everyone gets their information through different channels, and we do get a few complaints usually on the first couple days of new routing before people catch on. But I think it's been fairly effective, and we do have a minor route change coming up in the next little bit down by Harbor Key, where we've changed the routing to address sort of a city change in routing down there.
And I would just add to that from the Handy Dart side, because the service is a shared ride service and it is door to door. That's really where the Handy Dart service providers and the drivers themselves, when they build the manifests, they take the composition of both the riders and their destinations into consideration. So the Handy Dart service is a little different and a little higher touch in that regard than the fixed route service itself. So I hope that addresses your question.
Yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. Just one last time. Anybody else have questions? Heather, we'll go with Heather and then Kat.
Seth, could you talk about what happens in terms of emergencies? So for example, we recently had the Mount Underwood fire, which had some impacts to services in the Alberni Valley. So I was just wondering if you could chat about the decision-making process into stopping service.
Yeah, certainly. I have chatted with my colleague in operations about this service disruption. The decision to disrupt service and to impact service was ultimately made by operations based on the best information that they had available to them at that time. Ultimately, unfortunately, our communications team confused the details of the message and posted an alert that said that service was totally discontinued. That was an error that in sort of communication between our two teams. We have looked at that process and refined that process so that we don't make a similar error in the future. That was unfortunate and had an unfortunate impact, obviously, on folks. I apologize unreservedly for that error. We feel quite confident that wouldn't be repeated. But ultimately, our operations team is responsible for making determinations when service should be discontinued in the event of an emergency. We have a team of corporate investigators and safety and security that also support evaluation and support emergency response. We have a very experienced emergency response person on our corporate investigation team that has a really strong background in wildfire response. So he's been a real asset to our team in terms of being able to support that. I understand that because of the miscommunication, which compounded the impact to people, there were some people stranded, and that is certainly the last thing we want to happen in an emergency. Our emergency response team regularly supports evacuations in wildfires across the province. And so I think that was an unfortunate series of events that led to that particular situation, and we'd rather be on the receiving end of supporting people getting to where they need to go in those events, and we have looked at that process and refined it to ensure that this type of miscommunication doesn't happen again. I personally was not around that week, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I've talked to all the staff that were involved in that day and feel satisfied that appropriate steps have been taken to avoid such an issue in the future.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And just to mention, our Emergency Operations Center has been active since the fires started. So if there's ever a need to chat with folks on the ground, we'd be happy to take your operations staff phone calls or emails. And I just have one final comment. I have shared with you some feedback we received from folks that have had some complaints about the level of service with Custom Transit. So I just want to ensure that that's shared publicly. I'm not going to get into the details, but I do want to advocate for those that use that service and hope that we can come to a resolution.
Yeah, I might make a comment about just because this was a related thing that you previously passed on before the email, and I've chatted with my colleague in operations about this, and I wanted to just relay to folks, if you're talking to clients especially, and that there is a significant safety incident that occurred involving a HandyDART driver or a conventional transit driver that may have impacted someone's safety. We do have this team of corporate investigators in our safety and security team that can look at the CCTV and listen to the CCTV footage and do an investigation to ensure that that all safety protocols were followed. If it's a customer relations complaint and the driver's not sort of meeting standards of good customer relations, which we take quite seriously, we would work with the manager of the service to do an investigation into the particular driver. We just need the complaint submitted in a specific and detailed way within a few days, because the CCTV footage, if appropriate, gets deleted after 7 days. So I just wanted to pass that on. If there are specific issues that are happening on the buses, we do take them seriously and want to be able to address them in an appropriate manner.
Great, thanks, Seth. And what's the best way to share that information if there is any future complaints?
Our website has a contact us link. So if you go through our website and submit a form through the contact us link, that's the best way. But if you have my contact, feel free to reach out to me directly as well.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm glad you brought up, Heather, regarding, I know Kat's next. You brought up regarding the emergency, because I received a few emails saying, hey, no buses, and sent it over to, I believe, Heather, I sent you a copy of that, didn't I? So yeah, it was kind of a mix up, but lesson learned. And, you know, when we had emergencies in the past, you were there and it was great. So just so you know. And this was a little different than what we had in the past, definitely. So, Kat.
I have a question for Adam with HandyDART. I'm wondering, in a practical sense, how we can support people who maybe don't have a family doctor or like access to easy information about if they can take the HandyDART, because I personally didn't know that like I can take the HandyDART. It was like there wasn't something set in place for me and like other people in my situation that allows like easy access to that information.
Sure.
If you don't have, like a lot of people don't have
Family.
access to
Yeah.
a health unit like that.
No, and that's a great question. Thanks, Kat. So perhaps what I can do is share a little bit about the registration process itself, that'll hopefully alleviate some of the concern you have, and I can point you to some resources. So I'm going to go broad, and then I want to zero in so that we understand the foundation. So eligibility for HandyDART or custom transit services is codified in the BC Transit Act, and it's in order to be eligible for HandyDART service, you have to required to have a disability that is whether temporary or permanent, that is severe enough that it impacts your ability to utilize the conventional transit or the fixed route transit service safely and effectively on your own. And so that's the lens through which eligibility is determined. And in your community, and in every community across British Columbia, there is not a requirement to go see your family physician and be referred to the service. And that was done very purposefully, just given the level of unattachment in our province. We didn't want that to be an unnecessary barrier for individuals to access the service. So applying for service in your community is as simple as completing the application form and sharing with us sharing with our operating partner and us what your level of support needs are, and why it is of a challenge to utilize the fixed route service. So in my case, if I were to apply in your community, it would be, I'd fill out the application form, and it would state that I had cerebral palsy that impacts my my ability to walk medium to long distances, and I use a manual wheelchair to get around. Upon receiving that application form, the local Handy Dart office would likely reach out to you and have a conversation about what your needs are, what you're hoping to get out of the service, explain how it works, and then potentially conduct a what we call a site assessment to ensure that where you're looking to get picked up from is safe for a Handy Dart vehicle to access and egress, and then just to ensure that if you're using a mobility aid, like I am, or I can see you are as well, just to ensure that it has the requirements needed to be safely secured on the bus, and then go from there. So we do try and make it as seamless as possible to go through the eligibility process. We've really worked on that over the last number of years, because there was a time where in order to apply for Handy Dart service, you did need to go to a physician, get them to provide a whole bunch of information, and then have that kind of turned into the local Handy Dart office. And we really wanted to eliminate that barrier. Now, that being said, we do provide the option for you to provide or submit along with your application supplementary medical information that goes into a little more detail, and we list a number of different healthcare providers that you could obtain that information from. And really, all that is designed to do is to highlight any potential support needs that you may need right off the hop, or things like that, if you do have access to a clinician, but it is not a requirement. And again, that was done very purposefully, given the level of unattachment in our province, and particularly in more rural communities where it can be a little more difficult to access providers, when the answer can be fairly obviously addressed by the individual applying. So I hope that answers your question, and I'm sorry to hear about the challenges you had about learning about the service and potentially accessing it. So I'd love to chat with you more about that offline if time or need arises.
Thank you.
You bet.
So we could exchange phone numbers, or Kat, you can make a call, personal call. Is that okay, or how does that work?
Absolutely. I think we can, as we send the presentation over, I can provide my email address. That's the best way to get me, because then individuals can, if they correspond with me via email, they have the ability to kind of book a time directly with me to have a chat and go from there. And then there's all my contact information is listed there as well. So.
Super, thank you. And I'm glad you made it a little easier, because there's a big shortage. As we know, there's a shortage of doctors, and just to get to a doctor's appointment, a phone call, 3 to 4 months. I mean, it took me 4 months to get to see my doctor, and I used to pick up the phone. Oh, yeah, come in tomorrow or something like that. The world's changed. So, and I believe at the moment, there are a few people who do not know about the Handy Dart and that. And I'm wondering if there's more of a way to promote yourself out there. There has to be something through our paper, through a story, press release again, just something to get out there, because there's a new generation out there and not everybody knows. And a lot of people find sometimes even the application can be very challenging for them, and not everybody fills out an application with ease, and it's very frustrating. You try to make those phone calls and you go press 1, press 2, press 3. All you want to do is talk to someone. So it drives me nuts. But anyways, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate the information. Looking forward to seeing the pamphlet, the book in person, everything that you've presented today. And we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right, let's carry on. And that was a great presentation. I really thought it was really worthwhile. And so let's go to the next one, correspondence for action. Alberni-Claycott Regional District. Heather, planning accessibility events and.
Yeah, thank you. So in your agenda package, I have included the planning accessible events in the Alberni-Claycott Regional District document. So I did share this with the committee earlier in the year. It was in a Word format. However, since then I've incorporated your feedback and made it into a much nicer to look at document. So this document is intended for any user group, any nonprofits, any local government, First Nation to use when planning accessible events. Just to really encourage people to ensure that their events are accessible to everyone. So please share this with your workplaces. Marcy, I'd ask that you, maybe we could put this on the ACH and next agenda and ask all of the agencies there to share it with anyone. I've shared it with Chamber of Commerce. We do still need to do a social media push to share it with the community. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say on that, but this is one of the action items from our accessibility plan, so I'm happy to say that that's done.
Just a quick question. Any comments or anything? Anybody have any questions? To make sure? No? Okay, next. We are going to the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Sprout Lake Accessibility, Accessible Parking and Picnic Table Update, and Heather, will go to Heather and then to Kat.
Yeah, so you'll remember we previously met with BC Park staff to share some concerns that we had about accessibility at Sprout Lake Provincial Park. And I did go this summer and took a couple pictures, which are in your agenda package, which show that they have gone from 1 accessible parking spot at the boat launch to 3 accessible parking spots, well signed. And then they have also installed a wheelchair accessible picnic table at the boat launch, which is an improvement. The pathway to the picnic table in the beach area is still gravel. That's not been paved. So I've walked on it, but I'll let Kat share her thoughts on that.
And thank you, Kat.
Yeah, I was really excited to see the additional parking spaces, and the thing about the path is that they actually just added fresh gravel, so it's even harder to get on that path than it was the previous year. Unfortunately, we mentioned at the meeting with them that gravel is the hardest surface for wheelchairs and strollers, or it's just very unsteady for people who have mobility issues generally. So that's just one thing that could still be improved upon, is either compression of the gravel, or like ideally paving the path would enable people to get away from the boat launch and get to the family provincial park section, which would be really
Yeah, and if you take a look in your package, you'll see the picture with the picnic table, and it shows it, and should give them a wheelchair, let them try to ride over it. Yes, go ahead, Kat.
So I tried, my family specifically went to try this picnic table and I couldn't get to it. I was like sitting on the grass. You can see in the picture, I had to stay on the grass because the grass was the only surface that my wheelchair could get to. So my family sat there and I sat like 4 feet beside them essentially.
Which is not what it's all about. And I'm sure anybody that has problems walking, they would have a little issue there too. So we're near the end of the season. How do we deal with that? Do we have to wait for a quorum to forward this information?
No, I can reach out to the BC Park staff and just let them know. We're appreciative of some improvements, but there's still some to go.
Wonderful, because I think that's really important. So is the lake, I just want to ask Kat on going down to Sprout Lake, how about are you able to go to the lake? We were given some accessible runways to go down, and I think the city has them. So we haven't used them. Can we utilize them at Sprout Lake, or where it's not? It's sitting in the yard. I'd rather use them than not use them.
Yeah, to speak to that right now at the boat launch, if someone in a wheelchair can make it through the gravel, the grass, there's a hard grass section that is easy to go on, but then when the grass ends, there's a substantial amount of sand to the lake. So as I lose mobility, I need I like basically need someone to pick me up to bring me to the water. I have to like leave my wheelchair parked on the grass. Any there's no ramp, or like the thing that you mentioned would be helpful. There'd be some safety concern because of the boat. It would have to be placed, the path would either have to be improved upon so that someone could be far enough away from the boat launch that like their access would be safe, because if you put it like immediately from the parking lot, you're just right beside the boat launch. You have to be far enough away that you're safe distance from where people are putting their boats.
Okay, that's helpful, Heather. I remember you mentioning that to the parks representation that was here. And so Heather, maybe we could add that to the letter too. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Anybody have any questions on Sprout Lake or anything on? No, don't see anything. Okay, let us go to the next. We're not going to move that. Okay, reports, Bird Street update, verbal. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Solda. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I think we're almost at noon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to discuss the Bird Street redevelopment project and how it aims to improve accessibility for all residents and visitors. So just to give you a bit of an overview, the Bird Street redevelopment project was completed in response to the significant development that has occurred there over recent years. And so the result is that the streetscape obviously had been ripped up and changed, and so it was requiring resurfacing. And when the city looks at resurfacing of an area where there's significant work required, a comprehensive approach is taken to ensure that we're looking at functional upgrades, such as utility upgrades, but we also focus on where we can enhance accessibility, safety, and transportation efficiency. And so our goals include fostering an environment where everyone can move freely, particularly pedestrians and cyclists. So two items that I'll speak to that were completed within that project are the bump outs and letdowns. So I know they were a hot topic in the community for a while. And so they are new to our community. And so it really is about kind of educating people on what purpose they serve. So they're an extension of the sidewalk at intersections that reduce the distance that pedestrians must cross. So as you know, we have very wide streetscapes here, which are well loved for certain reasons, but they do give us some challenging safety concerns. And so by having those bump outs, they enhance visibility for both pedestrians and drivers, ultimately making our intersections safer. And then the letdowns are gradual slopes at these bump outs, and they provide kind of a seamless transition for individuals with mobility challenges. And of course, all of these are adhere to ADA standards, ensuring that usability for everyone. And the anticipated benefits of these bump downs with letdowns are significant. They provide the enhanced safety, improve accessibility, and just make it easier overall to navigate the intersections. Secondly, the dedicated multimodal lanes that you might have noticed. So these accommodate various modes of transportation, so vehicles, bicycles, and public transit. These lanes are designed with clearly marked bike lanes to ensure cyclist safety, and designated areas for ride-sharing services and public transit to improve the overall traffic flow and minimize delays. And so in encouraging the use of alternative transportation methods, of course, it helps reduce reliance on cards. And of course, by separating the different types of road users, we do create a more organized traffic flow that enhances overall safety. So the Bird Street redevelopment project, although it went on for quite some time and I know caused a lot of challenges for the neighbors in that area, which I can appreciate. It does help us in our commitment to accessibility and safety, and we're enthusiastic about the impact that the project will have on the community. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can. If there's any super technical questions that I can answer, I'm happy to take those to our Director of Infrastructure Services and bring back that information to a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions? Everybody knows where we're talking about, right? The Bird Street? Okay, good. Just thought I'd ask that. Any questions? No? Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, who has one? I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
That's okay, thanks. So I guess I'm just curious about sort of like bylaw enforcement, especially around that area. When I was driving up in the area, you know, I noticed there was actually a lot of cars parked in the bike lane. So I'm actually really curious to hear about the city's approach to ensuring that the access is there if we're really focused and dedicated to accessibility. I'm curious to hear what's been happening in terms of education and enforcement.
Thanks for that question, Jamie. Yes, absolutely. It was a challenge in the outset, particularly with the bike lanes in front of the apartment building. And so in all of our bylaw department, our approach is always education before enforcement. It was a significant change as those users had been using that area for parking, and there was a time constraint for them where I believe that they were also having some reduced parking at the apartment buildings as there was some work being done there. So we are alive to that. We did receive complaints and concerns, and so bylaw continued to work with those individuals and the apartment building manager to work through those. And of course, our hope is, you know, we give a bit of leeway in the initial outset to allow people to kind of adjust their patterns and routines. And then of course, where the behavior continues, we will enforce. And people, you know, we have 2 bylaw officers, and so of course, while they're out in the community responding to complaints, of course, wherever they notice things, they will address it. But that's where our complaint-driven process is important, and we do have an online submission form, or of course, you can call the bylaw office because we need our eyes and ears out there as well, because we can't be everywhere.
That answers your question, Jamie?
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay. Next, any other questions before we move on? Nope. Okay. City Hall lobby update. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Solta. So yes, the second topic I would like to touch on is, I don't know if many of you have been here to City Hall. I know with all of our online services, we don't get as many visitors as we used to. But I wanted to touch on the recent updates that we've done here at City Hall, and specifically the recent relocation of the front desk, reception, and cashier desks. So it's a move that enhances our accessibility while also optimizing our office space. So you may have remember coming into City Hall previously, where you would walk up the stairs through the foyer and then into another area where we had separate reception and cashier desks. So that has effectively been combined and into what used to be the foyer at the top of the stairs. And so the reasoning behind this is actually we're growing out of our space. We have more humans than office spaces. And so we were trying to think strategically about how we could create some more office space. And so in doing so, we relocated that area. Now, it was done with careful consideration of both functionality and budget constraints. So we did use existing materials from other areas within City Hall. And so by repurposing these materials, we were able to implement the changes on a very limited budget, maximizing our resources while also achieving a modern and what we think is a functional design. And so as far as accessibility improvements, the relocation of the front desk has significantly increased accessibility for our visitors in that we've introduced a dedicated wheelchair accessible desk. so that everyone, regardless of mobility challenges, can receive that assistance easily. And additionally, the new location offers closer access to some of our facilities, including the elevator and the washroom. So we think it overall enhances the experiences of those visiting City Hall. Of course, there can always be more improvements, but as I mentioned, we did have to do this on a limited budget. So again, happy to answer any questions or feedback if any of you have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, I can't remember. Is there when you get to the main door, is there a button to open it? Because I couldn't remember if there is or not.
Yeah, and we have the sliding operational doors.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody have any questions? No? You can see I use the front door a lot. No, I use the side door. Okay, next. ACRD accessibility training verbal update. Heather.
Thank you. Another one of our action items from the ACRD accessibility plan was to conduct accessibility training with all of our staff. So we received a grant from Spark BC, and we have hired Untapped Accessibility to provide 3 different training sessions. So we're starting this week with an all-staff training session on basic accessibility. All of our managers will also go through a HR type of training, and then our communications staff, anybody that engages frequently with the public, will be doing a special communications training session. So over the next month, all regional district staff will have received some accessibility training, which is going to help ensure that the services we provide remain accessible. Thank you.
So I have a quick question on that. What about the city? Are they going to be participating? Or are they invited to staff? No? Very inclusive, isn't it?
No, we received a $25,000 grant from Spark BC, and so Sarah, the city would be able to apply for that as well, and can help you with that.
Maybe that's a recommendation we need to make to the city to apply for. So, okay, thank you. Anybody have questions on that training? Nope. Okay, moving on. Late business. So, what I want to bring up is on, which I had on the, Marcy, you wouldn't know, but because you joined us late, but we added No Frills, the store, you know, where you go grocery shopping, everybody. And it was interesting because I hear from the public all the time, not all disabilities are visual. We all heard this and we know that, right? And I noticed in the parking lot, when you go park at No Frills, it does say not all disabilities are visual. And I thought, oh, this is great, until somebody parked in that spot and you couldn't see it. So, you know, as somebody got out of the car, and there's people out there that go, hey, why are you parking there? You don't have any disabilities. It would be great maybe in the future. I don't know how we tell the public this, or businesses put a sign up. Not all disabilities are visual, because if you drive over it, you can't, as somebody's parked there, you don't know. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's the first time I've ever seen that. Somebody had, kudos to No Frills. I'm assuming it was No Frills that, put it up. So I just want to bring that forward. And, you know, I thought that was great to see that, although it's in the wrong place.
Yeah, I actually did see them in front of Winners as well, the new Winners. Yeah, so yeah, I thought it was a step in the right direction for sure.
So maybe I'll just talk to the owners at No Frills, since I know them, but they can pass it on to whoever put that up. I just think a sign would have been much more handier for that. Anyways, I just wanted to let the committee know. So anybody else have anything on late business? Because sometimes you think about it, oh God, I wish I added it. Nope. All right, so let's go to question. Is there any questions? Anybody online?
Sorry, just give me 1 second here. Just check. No questions received online via email, and there's nobody in the boardroom.
And just before we adjourn, anybody have questions or anything they want to ask, or nope? Thank you, everybody. I hope you had a fantastic summer. Now the real world is starting again. We're back up, and all our committees are starting and that. So enjoy your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.